of the rainforest. P.S. I'm a Christian, I bake you a cake though. I don't know enough about him, but it sounds like he really hates Marxism and he's really pushing Brazil to become more of a world leader, and that he actually is for capitalism, and he's trying to get some of the SJW stuff out of the schools. I just saw a tweet by him a day or two ago. So on that front, and again, I don't know a ton about him, that all sounds good to me. And as a Christian, I appreciate your offer to bake me a cake.
The so-called progressives are actually regressing.
Please don't try to talk over me, which is what liberals do.
And what is Aleppo?
The Secretary of State has now briefed the United Nations Security Council on Iraq's illegal weapons programs, its attempts to hide those weapons, and its links to terrorist groups. I want to thank Secretary Powell for his careful and powerful presentation of the facts. The information in the Secretary's briefing and other information in our possession was obtained through great skill and often at personal risk. Uncovering secret information in a totalitarian society is one of the most difficult intelligence challenges. Those who accept that challenge, both in our intelligence services and in those of our friends and allies, perform a great service to all free nations, and I'm grateful for their good work. The Iraqi regime's violations of Security Council resolutions are evident, and they continue to this hour. The regime has never accounted for a vast arsenal of deadly biological and chemical weapons. To the contrary, the regime is pursuing an elaborate campaign to conceal its weapons materials and to hide or intimidate key experts and scientists, all in direct defiance of Security Council 1441. This deception is directed from the highest levels of the Iraqi regime, including Saddam Hussein, his son, the vice president, and the very official responsible for cooperating with inspectors. In intercepted conversations, we have heard orders to conceal materials from the UN inspectors. And we have seen through satellite images concealment activity at close to 30 sites, including movement of equipment before inspectors arrive.
Welcome to the Michael Brooks Show. We're broadcasting live from downtown Brooklyn, USA, where left is best as it is everywhere else, with super producer Matt Luck.
Hello.
Chief economist David Griscom.
How's it going?
Super producer David Slavic, roaming the digitosphere along with Vic Viana, Forrest, Artesia, the growing, expanding TMBS universe. On this week's program, Emma Vigeland. She's making her debut on TMBS from Rebel HQ and the Young Turks. We're talking about her recent interview that didn't go so well for a former Republican congressman as he was confronted with questions about U.S. drone attacks overseas. We're also going to talk about Joe Biden's nonsense, the state of the campaign, an extraordinary new clip from Rachel Maddow reminding you to stop watching cable news. What do we have to do to read some Neil Postman around here? It's not good for you. Not good for your brain. Then we have a gem with David Griscom as we sort of gloat about the failure of the Uber IPO. In the post-game, we have a debunk, of course, with Ben Burgess, and we have a long, extended enjoyment of the Ben Shapiro breakdown on the BBC, giving it the full TMBS experience.
Sir.
Lots of sirs. Then, of course, Cory Booker is still proving that he is a cuck for big tech, as well as all major monopolies in the American corporate sector, proving once again who the only candidate with about serious reform in this race really is. Lula speaks to the BBC, and he speaks truth and spicy about the buffoon fascist Bolsonaro. What would an invasion of Iran actually mean? And a shout out to Bernie Sanders and AOC taking on the usury credit card industry and opening the door for postal banking. Brilliant. Reform without reformism on the Michael Brooks Show. But first, we have to talk about Iran. And the Trump administration is continuing a very aggressive path under the auspices of Mike Pompeo and John Bolton in an attempt to instigate a conflict with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran has partially stepped out of the nuclear deal, a deal that every single international organization and anybody with any credibility said that Iran was fulfilling its end of the bargain of. In fact, the United States, in addition to aggressively and belligerently trying to break the deal, also, in fact, the Europeans, who, while discoursing support for the deal, were in fact not fighting to continue business with Iran and unlock sanctions and fight to keep the deal in place. So this is a really critical moment, both in terms of stopping a catastrophic military conflict, which it certainly would be in Iran, but also for understanding the nature of this government, a nature of a government that is demonized, that maybe some people go in the opposite end and sort of whitewash, but is complex and, again, has much blood on its hands, has many abuses on its hands, and certainly represents a religiosity and a conservatism that almost nobody on a sort of globally oriented left would embrace. At the same time, it also certainly has a history of resisting both East-West imperialism and other major factors. A president, and this is very important to note in light of some of the recent news, and then we'll work backwards. Last week, the Trump administration updated its military plan regarding Iran and outlined a plan that included sending 120,000 troops to the region. President Rouhani, the reformist, moderate conservative, let's say moderate conservative running Iran. He's not from the Green Movement. He's not a Khatami figure, who we'll get to in a moment, but he is a moderate. President Rouhani compared the current situation to the Iran-Iraq War of 1980 to 1988, where over 1 million Iranians were killed. This follows weeks of months, years of bellicose rhetoric from Washington and the United States as they withdrew from the Iranian nuclear agreement. Now, it's important to remember that the Iranian Revolution, which brought the Ayatollah Khomeini to power, and it laid the foundation of the Islamic Republic in 1979 and through the early 80s, was in fact a multi-tendency revolution. In the beginning of the revolution included Islamists, Social Democrats, and liberal factions. Also, socialists and communists were both militant, represented in parliament. There was also different factions of Islamists. There were socialist Islamists, there were more moderate Islamists, and there were extreme right-wing Islamists. And it was after the initial revolution that Khomeini was able to establish control over the country and achieved these aims with significant repression, as well as an engineered impeachment of the first president of revolutionary Iran. Many leftists were killed and forced to flee the country during this period of purging. Following Saddam Hussein's invasion of Iran with the covert support of the United States, keep in mind that the United States, as well as other members of the permanent members of the UN Security Council, were selling Iraq weapons while Saddam Hussein attacked Iran in the 1980s and used chemical weapons. Iran defended itself at a very high cost. Over 1 million Iranians died. The MEK, which is a very extreme, most would describe as political cult, which began, in fact, in the Islamic socialist tradition, but was sort of through a variety of its own wrongdoing, as well as the repression and solidifying Khomeini. They ended up fighting with Saddam Hussein during this war. This is a group that John Bolton, Rudy Giuliani, Howard Dean, and many other U.S. officials have taken money from and promoted, even as they are rightly loathed in Iran for fighting with one of Iran's main enemies. Following the Iran-Iraq war, a ruling coalition cemented its control, creating a system with multiple sites of political power, especially the the IRGC. The election of Khatami in 1997 was a reformist era. Khatami called for a dialogue of civilizations, and he located his Islamic politics in a pluralistic, sort of world-opening politics. He unlocked domestic restrictions. He reopened European embassies. He attempted to reform the intelligence services and ran afoul of them. He also recently has faced a media ban in the past several years because of his role in the 2009 Green Movement, of whose leaders are such as Mir Hussein Mousavi are still under house arrest. And this opening was dashed for several reasons, but it had a lot to do with the Bush administration's rejection of overtures from Iran for a grand bargain after the September 11th terrorist attacks. Iran had, going back to the 80s, been virulently opposed to the types of Salafist terrorism exemplified by al-Qaeda. So ironically, in the 80s, while the United States was amplifying the threat of Iran and rejecting all of its correct political demands, while deploring some of its methods, of course, they were promoting the precursors of groups like al-Qaeda and ISIS, who through funding from countries like Saudi Arabia, have a pure totalitarian worldview without any of the other political or innovative strands that are evident in Iran. Now, again, this is not a support of the Iranian model, but the reality is that it's a very different politics and very different history than one exemplified by al-Qaeda, obviously. Now, Iran condemned the September 11th attacks, and in fact, they were coordinating with us in Afghanistan. This was rejected by the Bush administration, who included it, and of course, in the infamously David Frum penned Axis of Evil speech, which helped solidify the global war on terror, which is still under the original AUMF authorization of military force that was passed after September 11th, is still responsible for U.S. military activity across the globe and has been responsible for millions of deaths and not resolved any longstanding problems with Iran. President Ahmadinejad took power. The Green Movement challenged him. Then President Rouhani came to power in 2013. Unlike Khatami, he enjoyed the support and trust of the supreme leader, Khatami, and others. So he was allowed to, with his foreign minister, Javad Zarif, pursue diplomacy with the United States. The supreme leader at the time promised that the United States was not a trustworthy partner and would break the deal, which has, of course, been precisely what has happened since the election of the Trump administration. So you're in a dynamic now where conservative forces in Iran, reactionary forces, have been empowered because of the undermining of the deal. There's still a huge amount of repression of, as an example, the Baha'i faith in Iran. And ironically, given the initial discourse of the revolution, both of religious and left discourses, there's a huge amount of income inequality in Iran. And the Iranian elite, like the rest of the global elite, from the United States to Pakistan to France to Russia, hoards its wealth. And Rouhani's economic reforms have actually mainly been sort of in the austerity, sort of mainstream global consensus neoliberal approach, while at the same time, Iran has not benefited from following the nuclear deal because sanctions relief have not truly kicked in. So we're in a situation now where the fundamentals of this agreement have been thrown out by an insane administration in Washington. The worst forces in Iran have been empowered, and under the relentless pushing of incredibly dangerous governments in Israel and Saudi Arabia, we could be at the precipice of what would be the most catastrophic thing that could happen in the Middle East right now. And this is in a context where there is an ongoing mass murder supported by the United States in Yemen, as well as an ongoing multi-party supported mass murder in Syria that implicates every single world power. It is absolutely, at the bare minimum, a litmus test for Democratic candidates to campaign on restoring the Iran deal, and any sort of superficial fear-mongering about this government needs to be rejected outright. It doesn't mean, as with all the other places that we talked about, that we negate the reality of that government, that we deny that, as an example, just recently, a prominent women's rights attorney was just sentenced to a draconian and vicious prison sentence in Iran for speaking out on equality. This is all true, but it's also true that Iran is run by rational deal makers who followed their end of the deal. What is the United States run by? Who is Israel run by? Who is Saudi Arabia run by right now? Those answers are very disturbing, and they reveal the sort of core dangers that are posed in the Middle East today. And they don't, regardless of what we think of Tehran. And I think we should think a lot of very bad things about the Islamic Republic. But that is not where the core threat emanates from in any realistic view of the world whatsoever. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that? I mean, I know it was, extremely eloquent, but David, I know you'd like to win some brownie points at the Persian community, so.
Well,
I'm just playing.
I mean,
you had their back during the World Cup, and you liked the credit you were getting on Twitter.
I have a lot of very close Iranian friends and family, and
Yes.
It's been very worrying, honestly, to be completely honest, to see what's been going on, and also just how shrouded in mystery Iran is to the most American viewers. They don't understand sort of what it's like on the ground, wherein, yes, you do have the Islamic Republic, and especially in the major cities, it's not particularly popular, but a lot of folks in Iran understand that in the situation of war and occupation, that trying to create some kind of great rupture with the state right now opens up the possibility of U.S. military intervention, which is something that is a very real threat. I mean, it's not a straw man at all.
No.
And, I think
horrifying.
it's important, though, to also recognize the history of the Iranian Revolution, which, you talked about, to just see the continuity between the Shah and Khomeini. So we were talking about how a lot of these leftist groups were very influential, especially in the initial uprising against the Shah. Once the Islamic Republic of Iran was established, they used the same lists of people who were under surveillance under the Shah for execution. Yep. Because they had so much more power than the Shah even did at towards the end of his reign. I mean, so it's a real absolute. Hamid Dabashi, who's a really great Iranian writer and theorist, because it's 40 years now since the revolution, called the Iranian Revolution the last great illusion of the 20th century, and it really highlighting how the difficulties of trying to create a post-colonial state. Because the revolution in Iran was very much something that came out of like hyper-exploitation under imperialism, Western imperialism, uprising of people, and that fragile moment that can happen where it can all sort of slide, unfortunately, into disaster.
But I do think it's important to understand. I mean, those are really important points. So one, it's just in the present tense. Two countries that the United States has been relentlessly economically terrorizing, Venezuela and Iran, under the false presumption that the population will hold the governments accountable instead of the outside interference. The second broader point, I think, there was a line that I think Alistair Crook brought forward, who's a very interesting figure and kind of a conversation for another day, but he's a former British intelligence operative who facilitates conversations between mainly EU and some US officials and groups like Hamas and Hezbollah through a foundation in Lebanon. And he said that one Iranian he spoke to said, after the revolution, we were able to think in our own terms again. And, and I think what is a challenge, including for people with like a Marxist perspective, is he did not mean, he meant Islamic. He meant Persian, Iranian. And, what is contested is what that actually means. But I think that we need to be very real. And one of the reasons we need like an actual cosmopolitan socialism is that people are going to want to draw from a broad range of roots. And I think you're totally right. And Tabashi's amazing. That Shia Spirit of Resistance book, if anybody has a chance to read it, I really would. He's very clear about the incredible abuses of that government. But I think what he also points to is that there was that moment in the late 70s, which was distinct about that revolution, when their constitution said neither East nor West. We don't want to be a client of the United States or the Soviet Union. Obviously, our primary adversaries are U.S. and British because of our histories. But we're going to draw from this tradition. And then, of course, you're drawing from an invented tradition anytime you make up an imagined past, and that's led to a lot of repression and conservatism. But I think that desire to think on one's own terms is pretty universal.
Absolutely. And it goes without saying, but I just want to reiterate it. The fact that the United States is so worried about Iran is not because they care about people being terrorized by the state. It's not because they even care about Iranians. It's because of that. It's because of they don't like the idea of there being a state that does not toe Western imperialist line in that part of the world. And that is what's at stake right now, and that's why they're so focused on it. So all the lies and all the nonsense, and Tom Cotton talking about, even the 2017 protests, which were historic. There was a lot of protests in 2017, and they took a different character than previous ones because they were actually in rural areas. They had a much larger working class component to it. And I remember Tom Cotton, from Arkansas, was talking about this a lot. About all these Iranians are crying for freedom, and we want to give it to them. Kant doesn't want to give these people freedom. He wants to give them, modern day slavery and subjugation. Right. So recognizing that, there's these people who really are trying to take very cynically any kind of divisions within the state in Iran. And that's why some people, even critics of the regime, don't publicly come out, in Western media or English speaking publications being critical of the regime, because they know how it's going to be used, especially in the United States.
Absolutely. Yeah. Matt? There's nothing from Orwell that's apropos. All right, let's get to the shout-out.
Let's get to the shout-out. Shout-out. Creepy. Shout-out.
I feel like the camera should be on Griscom for this. He gets really into it, man. We all love DJ Danarchy, out of control. The sonic minds behind the TMBS experience. Look, a lot of people talked about this over the past several days. Of course, I hope that this is leading up to an endorsement of AOC for Bernie Sanders. I certainly think that would be the right move. But this legislation that Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have partnered on to take on the credit card industry is incredibly important. And it also undermines, Emma and I are going to talk about Joe Biden. But, and I won't turn this shout out into a diss of Joe Biden, although I probably should. There is not a single area, I will a partial, there's not a single area of modern policymaking, from the invasion of Iraq to the relentless squeezing of families by this unbelievably predatory industry, even predatory by just normal capitalist standards, that Joe Biden has not only been a participant in, but an architect of in this case. Obscene. I'm going to quote a little bit now from a piece, I believe. Where is this from, Griscom? CNBC? Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez released a plan on Thursday to cap credit card interest rates at 15%. Again, this is incredibly important and basic. I mean, you have people getting jacked up exorbitant rates. They rely on these things to pay for basic goods. Remember, over 50% of Americans can't scare up a couple $100, for basic needs and survival. I grew up in an environment like this. I know exactly what it's like to see a family literally choosing how to spend a few extra dollars on groceries or potentially have gas, completely excluding out like leisure and other basic activities, the regular humiliation and stress of that. And also, like doing things literally like having to ask for loans to figure out how to pay rent or fix a car. Back to this. Sanders has made his case for the presidency in large part by calling out what he calls corporate greed and the need for better better protections for workers and consumers. Ocasio-Cortez, a first-term representative from New York, has caused a stir in her short tenure by embracing dramatic proposals, such as the Green New Deal and overhaul to the U.S. tax code. The Bankers Association said it would be a mistake for the government to artificially limit these choices. This specific proposal will only harm consumers by restricting access to credit for those who need it and driving them towards less regulated, more costly alternatives. Well, how about we regulate those too? And while we're at it, we're going to give people single payer health care. We're going to create a universal public housing option, a job guarantee, and other vital reforms so people are not tortured and terrorized by the economy in this way. We have a brief clip of Cortez and Sanders outlining this important, the other major part of this legislation, which is postal banking, which Marissa Baradaran, great author and scholar and frequent guest on this show, has been forwarding as well.
Access to banking services.
That's right.
Because the big banks are not worried about somebody who, makes $10 an hour. They can't make enough money off of that. So we have got to move to a universal banking through the postal system. You got post offices in almost every community in America. They should be available to provide basic banking services so that people do not have to go into payday lenders, which is a whole other story. So you think of Wall Street as disgusting. Think about payday lenders charging people 150% interest rate. So
he's exactly right. And the universal banking option would actually eliminate the fake scare scenario that the Bankers Association put out in its silly propaganda to undermine this push. I mean, look, I'm going to keep saying this, and I wouldn't be overly neurotic about the polls at this point. And Bernie Sanders has amazing fundamentals in terms of grassroots support. But this is a distinct political offering if you care about not only long-term structural change in terms of great policy ideas. Absolutely. Elizabeth Warren has some great policy ideas. I think you have to give, all the very serious questions I've raised for her, but you have to give Tulsi Gabbard some credit on holding the line on things like opposing intervention in Venezuela. And then I think basically that's it. I don't really think any other Democratic candidates I really don't have much time for. With, obviously Biden being the worst, closely followed by, I guess, Klobuchar or Buttigieg, but what Bernie Sanders is offering in terms of policy, but also a structural understanding of activating a population to achieve things, to broadly democratize a society, is unparalleled and also going to be absolutely necessary in implementing even the most modest reform agenda. And unfortunately, at this point, we need a hell of a lot more than a modest reform agenda. All right, let's do the gem first, and then we'll do the pitch. And then we'll do the pitch, and we'll, banter a little bit, and then Emma will be coming probably around 8-ish. But David Griscom, take it away.
Yeah, so this actually flows pretty well when you talk about the dangers of a reformist agenda. So one of the main activities that aggravated and led to the financial crisis in 2008 is set to return to its pre-crisis level of deregulation, thanks to our Republican friends in the Trump administration. So the largest U.S. banks have been ramping up their lobbying efforts to repeal a post-financial crisis rule that required large lenders, who because of their size are crucial, absolutely, they're crucial to maintaining our financial system. Basically, they want to repeal a rule that forces them to set aside cash to cover themselves in case their derivative trading within their own affiliated banks goes bad. So basically, this is what happened in the financial crisis, where banks were moving around derivatives that were based on mortgages, and they were bundling them up and moving them from bank to bank. And then when they started to realize that the underlying assets were bad and were toxic, nobody wanted to, to accept them or to trade them. So basically, you just had this huge credit crunch, and essentially most banks stopped lending to one another. So this rule, which was put in place, I believe, in 2015, requires banks to cushion their derivative trading with their affiliates, basically saying if you want to make a trade with one of your affiliate banks, you need to have so much cash that you just put aside to cover your losses in case your derivative trading goes bad. So affiliate banks, just for people who don't know, are banks that a major bank has a 50% share in or more. So these are basically, smaller banks, international banks, and because of the centralization of the global finance system, it's a pretty large group that we're talking about here. So this is a significant rule change because with this rule being gotten rid of, it exposes so many banks to one, opening themselves up to another kind of asset crunch or a crisis, and also exposes our entire financial system to all of the repercussions in case that there is a loss in these asset values. So the lobbyists for these major banks argue, and this is a quote from the Wall Street Journal, that they want to do this to centralize risk internally without increasing a firm's overall exposure to risk. But what they really want to do is they want to have derivatives that they're holding in banks overseas,
right?
So not in the United States, and they want to bring those to the United States because then they'll be covered by the FDIC, basically meaning if they go bad, that's exactly right, that we'll be paying, that the federal government will be paying for their...
Publicize the losses. It's a great system.
Absolutely.
It's a beauty.
And we're seeing exactly what happened when we're talking about this mild milquetoast regulatory apparatus that we try to put in place following the financial crisis. Is just being chipped away at by the Trump administration and all these Republican lawmakers. And this is a story that's not necessarily going to grab the headlines, right? Because it's a little complicated and confusing to follow. But it's absolutely significant because since the beginning of 2019, the banks have really started to chip away at a lot of these smaller rules. So, people are estimating that this represents only about $40 billion worth of trading, which is a lot of money. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. But we're seeing over and over again that the regulatory apparatus that was put into place following the financial crisis is being blown out completely.
What's the Marxist answer to this? This is the dynamic we always see, right?
Absolutely. This is what Rosa Luxemburg talked about. Whenever you're pushing up, whenever you're pushing all these reforms, there's always a chance that the ball just comes right back down and crushes them until we fundamentally change our economic system and our banking system, this is why what Bernie Sanders is talking about with AOC is so important, right? Moving the majority of people's money outside of these small groups that have continued to grow.
That is a form of decommodification. You have the option to get out of this predatory system and go to your post office. I'd use it. Mm-hmm. Period.
Absolutely. And it's a chance so that we're not so tied to the financial health of organizations that want to engage in very, very risky behavior and want us to cover their losses because they're so fundamental to the U.S. credit and financial system, which they currently are. Right. So we'll see what happens with this. The FDIC initially was not interested, but recently a statement, this is a quote from the chairman of the FDIC, said, "It is one of the things that's on the to-do list, and this rule change would also have to be passed, approved by the Fed." And Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, just said, "We are looking at the inter-affiliate margin question." So there's been a lot of movement that's been going on behind the scenes over the past couple of months on this question. And it's something that we should definitely be paying attention to and being a little bit worried about.
Excellent. David Griscom, Economic Minute. I think that should be his new thing. Yeah. gets to the point. That's what we're talking about. Talking about money. All right. Let's get to the pitch. So I just want to say, first of all, only patrons have access to this now, but we have just released for our patrons and are already snatching up the deal, the date and location of our next TMBS live show, which is going to be August 24th in Chicago, Illinois. Unless the moon falls in Lake Michigan, we will be there. Not sure of all of the guests yet. I think this one is going to, we will have guests. This is going to be a more TMBS-centric show in terms of the crew up on stage. But we're going to be at Lincoln Hall. Patrons have an early access code right now. They're buying their tickets. They're getting their early deal. We're very excited to see you, Chicago, in August. I'm excited. This is the 90th episode of our show. I want to thank you guys. I'm really proud of the work that we're all doing together, and I really appreciate everybody who supports the show and watches the show and engages with it on every level. Next week, I couldn't do it this week because I'm already fighting something. Next week, we are doing the Food Bucket Challenge as promised. Now we're healthfully over that 2,000 patron goal, which of course means that our next goal is 3,000 patrons. I wonder, we have to figure out what we're going to do when we hit 3,000 patrons. We know if people remind me what I promised for 5,000 patrons, I'll do it. But if not, I won't do it.
I think we should just do mukbangs every time.
Mukbang?
So I'll explain what mukbang is, or mukbang. I don't know how to pronounce it.
I think it's mukbang.
But we're gonna mukbang the food buckets next week.
The food buckets next week.
Mukbang is a genre of streaming content, video streaming content originated in South Korea, where you basically just eat while talking into the camera.
Oh.
So I think that's what we should do every time we reach 1,000.
I'm going to think of something more inspiring.
What about in the future? Patrons. What about in the future? We just eat good food and not.
You know what? When we get 3,000 patrons, you know what we'll do for 3,000 patrons? We'll have a nice dinner with a patron, and we'll live stream some of it. We'll do something really pleasant, and we'll take some of your questions in the live stream.
In Red Dead Redemption, we can kill KKK guys, and it doesn't affect our honor rating.
You want me to try to do another fucking video game thing?
Yeah, you want to see Michael try to kill a KKK guy.
Yeah, he might win.
Yeah, exactly. We can't have that. We're going to get dunked on by all the neo-Nazis after Michael gets killed by...
Right. Look, this show is providing unprecedented value and resources for a community. We're working on building a new left movement of thinkers and doers who can actually really implement and do and change in our world. Patrons at the Comrade and Above levels get the monthly phone calls with me, often David Slavic. All patrons get access to David Griscom's reading series. All patrons get access to the post games, which are really essentially a second show. Like our Morning Zoo, very fun show, and the Debunks with Ben Burgess. Then patrons are also getting the illicit histories and idea primers. So it's really a significant amount of content. Also, of course, Comrades and Above now are getting the video illicit histories. The next one that Vic Viana is putting together will be going up pretty soon, and then we'll publicly release the first one on the illicit history of the Rainbow Coalition and the Jesse Jackson run. This month so far has been a little uneven. So definitely, some people are having financial stresses. So come in, pick up the slack, and keep us going with our momentum. I mean, that is the nature of these things, right? We've established a base, but we do need to keep expanding out things and securing our base for what we're doing now. And I would say, I think additional things we might want to offer in the future, because now, again, we have this broad brain trust around us, and there's a lot of different potentials and avenues we can go as, say, we get up to 3,000 patrons, 4,000 patrons. And also, inventing even potentially alternatives, other ways for people to become members. That's another thing that we're interested in investing in. So I'll keep promising this, but next week we will definitely have a list available of the endless amounts. I mean, really, the illicit histories and primers already, the grounding you can get from Jamaica to Turkey is unparalleled. So become a patron today, patreon.com/TMBS. We appreciate all of you. Thanks for the growth. We're honored to do it.
I have to say that my brain is still in recovery mode from taking in so many high-level important ideas.
Yeah, but in this case, your brain actually is in recovery mode from actually taking on those high-level ideas.
Hello.
I like how you have to end a pitch with a Dennis Prager drop.
Socialism here in America.
Ooh, every time we get a new patron, Seb Gorka goes, "Oh, socialism, yeah. No, Dad told me that I could promote the Vichy Ren in the United States, but now TMBS is growing."
Yes, indeed, boo. Yes, indeed, hiss.
What is the psychic toll of listening to these people all the time? I mean, just the fact that there is a world with Seb Gorka and Dave Rubin, it's just, yeesh.
And
it's a tough deal, everybody.
They're accessing the highest level politicians.
And they're accessing the highest level politicians. Like, could you imagine if Trump wins a second term? I don't know, like Dave Rubin would be like press secretary, and like, you know, like the
Bolsonaro,
and like the dodgy imam will be like national security advisor. Jesus Christ!
I mean, you can't top. We have Ben Carson. And
Ben Carson, to me,
and the wife of the wrestling guy.
Ben Carson is a much higher functioning human being than some of these other people. You know, at least he's sort of relatively.
Sorry, Stephen Miller, for instance.
Okay, well there you go. That all of a sudden a cloud just descended. No, it is
a fact, and you will not deny it.
Right. You know, Ben Carson doesn't create any news. I think that's the thing I will say. Like, literally his scandal has just been like, so like Tiffany wants to redecorate, like sue me. Go fuck yourself. I got people literally buying they're buying deals from the Saudis, and you're bitching at me about dinnerware.
We went over budget. Have you seen what other people are doing?
I said that I stabbed somebody in the belt and God broke the motion, and I'm one of the higher functioning human beings. And now all of a sudden, I mean, the whole thing is crap. Like Ben Carson like redecorated. I feel like that is actually his scandal is a very standard scandal. Like, I feel like that one could happen in any administration. That some like backwater cabinet secretary like went over budget. That's not even
let anything go by. I had to get revenge.
Do you remember the concept we had that? All right, so Dave Rubin is Zoolander. That's clear. And Dennis Prager is the guy who's microdosing him and brainwashing him to assassinate the Malaysian prime minister, so sweatshops aren't stopped.
Yeah, or to just basically obsess about demographics.
Yeah. But if we don't, then there won't be national cohesion.
Yes, David. No national cohesion.
Yeah, David, no national cohesion. Hello. Hello. If there's no national cohesion, then somebody will rob your house, Dave. Don't you like your basketball on your shelf? Ooh, I like my basketball a lot. And the thing with Carson was that after losing the Republican primary, he would become a supervillain.
Hello, Derek. Hello. Welcome to your relaxation time.
Welcome to your ideas time, Dave.
Welcome to your ideas time, Dave.
This wonderful 80s classic soothe you.
Ooh, I do like that song.
Happy time.
Yeah, we might need to redo that scene.
I think we're going to need to redo that scene. I think we're going to need to do a historical reenactment of Dave Rubin's Zoolander.
You just put this little slip of paper on your tongue, Dave, before you enjoy the ideas.
Yeah. Dave, there's going to be so many wonderful ideas.
Whoa, I've never thought about the birth rates in Muslim communities like that before.
My God, I used to think that Muhammad was just a nice guy that sold me kebabs. Now I'm scared.
I just thought Muhammad was a guy Jesus was nice to once.
I just thought that Ali was a guy that Jesus was buddies with, but I didn't learn about it for my bar mitzvah. I didn't realize that I should be scared of him. That's such an incredible concept.
Nothing to worry about at all. Just relax.
Just relax, Dave.
Just ideas.
Just ideas.
Just rational thought.
Just rational thought, Dave.
Think rationally.
Think rationally. Ooh, mean feminists on college campuses not thinking rationally. Ooh, mean Muslim man. He doesn't want you to think rationally or build a hot tub in your house. Ooh, he's a mean man.
Hey there, Derek. My name is Lil Cletus.
Oh my God.
That's a great fucking movie too.
And that is a great fucking movie. Zoolander really holds up. That's an incredible movie. You know
Go
what?
to patreon.com/Zoolander.
Go to patreon.com. Yeah. In the bonus episode, Dennis Prager gives me ayahuasca and explains why I should be afraid of people from Morocco.
What? This is the new set? This is the new set at PragerU. What is this? A set for ants?
Who is supposed to do commentaries on why you can't tell jokes anymore?
You could only fit
ant comedians that can't tell jokes about gays anymore.
Wait, you could only fit maybe one of the Weinstein brothers in there.
And he would have to hunch over because they're very blubbery in person.
I'm just a regular kid who wants you to know the real truth about child labor laws, okay?
I guarantee you that is a verbatim quote. I am almost certain that that is a verbatim quote from one of the Dave Rubin training videos.
Still ain't outdated. In the good old days, kids as young as 5 could work as they please, from textile factories to iron mills.
I forgot how apt that is.
Yeah, I was gonna say this movie
It's
gave
just
us
PragerU.
Yeah, this is PragerU. We don't even need to do these commentaries anymore. You could just rewatch a '90s classic.
But today, the age-old right of children to work is under attack.
The only problem is that the Will Ferrell character is much more charismatic and likable than Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager, what a misery. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Dennis Prager would be just too obviously the villain.
I know, that wouldn't work. He'd be like, I don't think I should go with you to a room to take LSD. You seem like a very mean man, Mr. Prager. Even Dave could tell that. I mean, Dave is very stupid, but still.
All the outward signifiers of the bad guy in movies.
Yeah. I mean, I thought this would be the movie where, in the end, you would secretly oppose sweatshops because it would be so obvious that you would support sweatshops because you look like such an evil man.
You're like animatronic, but also, yeah.
Dennis Prager's got a lot of balls, though. He's just like, yep, that's exactly right. And put the camera closer on me. Give me a camera angle that would be unflattering to George Clooney. I will take that one. All right, are we all set? Okay, racism doesn't exist. All right. Now let's go to the opposite end of the human spectrum from Dave Rubin. The great Emma Vigeland has entered the Left is Best headquarters. We're going to take a brief break, and then she's going to come join us, and we're going to talk about this amazing. We have to play this clip of you and Daryl Issa. It was really well done. Very funny to watch him tantrum. Then we're going to actually talk a little bit about Yemen. We're going to talk about why Joe Biden is such trash. We have a clip of Rachel Maddow that, like, people asking me to stop criticizing Rachel Maddow. She's going to need to stop doing clips like this. All right, we'll take a brief break and we'll be right back on the Michael Brooks Show. start with Issa. Yeah. Oh wait, how do you want me? Welcome back to the Michael Brooks Show. Tonight is NBA Draft Night. But Emma Vigeland, who is a correspondent for TYT, is so committed to her craft and, frankly, such a good friend of show that she's here in spite of that. In fact, we're all here in spite of that for some reason.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you.
Yeah. My headphones definitely got unplugged just then. There we go. There we go. Yeah.
Are you like Bhaskar Sunkara always talks about being like a long-suffering Knicks fan?
Yeah, you know, I mean, if I was to power rank the teams I care most about, it would be the Giants or my first love. I went to the Super Bowl in 2011 when they won the second time against the Patriots, the less exciting one, but still pretty phenomenal in Indianapolis. And then I'm a pretty massive Rangers fan because I'm white. And but I love the Knicks, and I am a big fan of the direction they're taking, which maybe is a controversial opinion, but I have a lot of faith in Scott Perry, and I like David Fizdale. I think he's the man. So I'm hopeful that the Knicks. I mean, the
you
odds.
Still have hopes.
I have hopes still. I mean, I'm young.
The direction you see them going, is that getting Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving?
I like that they leaned into
What
the
else would that
tank.
be?
And first of all, they drafted phenomenally. Kevin Knox, I mean, he has some he's not quick on the defensive end, but Mitchell Robinson was a block monster, and you got him in the second round. He's an athletic freak. And I think as long as the Knicks land in the top 3, if they get R.J. Barrett or Zion, I'll be okay. But this is such a terrible year for having flattened odds because it could have been the Knicks' savior year. They were the worst team in the NBA last year by 2 games. So
who was arguing about getting Zion with you? One of our people was arguing about Zion. Was that a Lakers guy?
Oh,
I feel like that was a Lakers guy
yeah, it was
saying
a
that
Lakers
they
guy.
deserved it more.
Are you? Can I curse on here? Are you fucking kidding me? The Lakers. It's like the Celtics and the Lakers. They're set, man. They don't need any more
the
championships.
Lakers are the Lakers you're talking about just set in terms of just pure wins
for the Knicks to have.
Yeah, was it like Charles Oakley and Allen Houston?
It was either 74 or 76.
Yeah, not
Oakley. That's championship.
No, that's
last championship.
When was
like
last playoffs?
Like,
though?
well, no, the '90s with Patrick Ewing,
right?
And they would
that's what I'm
always
saying.
get, and then they were great, but then they would play the Bulls.
Well, 94, yeah, they lost, and that
Yeah.
was the year that these cable channels made the controversial decision to cut away to the OJ White Bronco video when the NBA playoffs were on, and they completely cut away from that. Yeah.
That's wild. That's a weird choice.
I know. I would have been pissed if I was a kid.
I would be super pissed.
But the Knicks lost the finals that year, and then so it's
was that to like the Spurs? I think.
I don't know.
Was
I don't think so.
the lockout season or something?
No. I mean,
Am I getting that
the
mistaken?
Spurs. I think the first championship they won was with Popovich, so that would have been in the 2000s.
But I feel like in the
I could be wrong.
I feel like in the '90s, the Knicks though. Wait, the Knicks. Okay, they lose to the Bulls, but then who had the rivalry with the Bucks? Was that the Bulls?
Oh, see, again,
I think,
they're my
that was
third
the Knicks.
power ranked team.
That was the Knicks. The Knicks had because I remember even down to the point of like Spike Lee and Reggie Miller would have
That's the Pacers.
Right, the Milwaukee. Wait,
Indiana Pacers.
Indiana Pacers
with Reggie Miller, because Reggie Miller does the choke sign to Spike Lee.
Oh yeah.
That's what
That's
you're
it.
thinking of.
That's it. I don't know why I thought of the Bucks.
But
that's been a long time.
Oh, a long time
since they were like not even a championship team, but like a credible competing they've got
they might have made the playoffs a couple times with Melo, but I don't even know if they
did.
Did they? Yeah.
I mean, they were
When did they do that?
2015. They had their
the
best
Jeremy
run.
Lin year.
Yeah, and they
Where is he with the Raptors now?
He's been bouncing all over the place.
Yeah, he's all over. He's kind of a journeyman. I mean, I would say that I just think that the Knicks leaned into the tank this year, which they've been needing to do forever. They've been selling off draft picks for overpriced assets for a long time. I feel like Dolan's kind of taken a step back, so I'm happy about it.
We made fun of Dolan's music video on this show once. Is
Oh,
that
thank
okay
God.
with you?
Oh my God,
Okay.
it's like more than okay.
All right. 'Cause real Knicks fans definitely hate Dolan.
Yeah, I mean he leaves the Rangers alone, which is like the greatest thing that has happened to the Rangers, right?
Just like having a trust fund baby get out of the way.
Yeah.
So you had, I want to play this interaction that you had. When was this? Was this last week?
Yeah, so I was at the SALT conference last week, which was shocking that they invited TYT, but I think they wanted
Tell
more.
people what the SALT conference is.
So it's kind of like a poor man's Davos. I'm definitely gonna get invited back next year.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could see your credentials are getting minted as we speak.
Right. Well, and it was just a lot of crypto people. And, you know, I struggle with wanting to I don't want to give everyone a platform, right? So a lot of people want to come on to talk about their product, and I don't have enough time to research all of these things. They're Bitcoin products. So it's an interesting concept to me, but I think a lot of the language of democratization is just kind of a farce. And the more you look into it, the more shady it becomes. So I'm stuck in this uncomfortable spot, and I didn't want to do many interviews, but we had to get some content out of it. And luckily, Daryl Issa was my first interview.
So, and Daryl Issa, what's his bio? Can you remind everybody of what his bio is?
So he was, at the time, the richest congressman in the country. And when he was in Congress, and he represented the San Diego area, and he's just him and Trey Gowdy were butt buddies, and they were obsessed with going after Benghazi and these politicized investigations into Barack Obama is how I would summarize his time in office. And he was just a warmonger, a pro-corporate guy, as conservative as it gets, despite being in a fairly purple district. And then he just kind of resigned in anticipation of losing to a Democrat, which he did.
And several years ago,
the district went blue.
The district went blue.
Yeah, right.
Wait, that's not Porter's district, is it?
You're putting me on the spot.
I have no idea, so I'm not putting you on the spot. You have to actually have information yourself. I guess in the spot of knowing more than me, which would be easy, about who the California congressional delegation. But there was a piece in the New Yorker that came out maybe even a long time ago. And they wrote it in a way that went right to the edge of libel laws about him. But there's another element of Daryl Issa, and I'm going to be careful myself, but there's a lot of stuff about how exactly he made this money.
Yeah.
And
I remember vaguely that article, but I didn't even know I was going to interview him until 5 minutes before, so I didn't have the time
he
to
made
do
a
the deep dive.
lot of money, I believe, on on car security systems. And
which is now what he works in. He works in the securities
he's
back to it, yeah. He's in the private sector. Shocker. I know.
And the article indicated that he might have had a lot of experience on every end of the equation of car security.
Secret message received.
Jacking cars and then installing the car alarms.
If you read that piece, that was not that far off from what they were kind of implying.
Should put him in touch with young Michael Cohen.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, it actually, in some ways, I remember reading it. I was like, this is definitely the most interesting Republican congressperson I've ever read about.
Right.
But anyways, it was an interesting article. There was this thing about an arson in it, and I'd look it up. It was an interesting read. I have no idea the validity of any of it. But the New Yorker,
a lot of people
were saying, and the New Yorker has a lot of prestige. But you quite rightly chose to ask him about, and this is great because you're asking about civilian casualties under Trump's drone war, and an advantage I think you do have coming from a progressive perspective is that the what about Obama thing doesn't work.
Right. Well, can I just give a little bit of context?
Please. Yeah.
So clips do better when they're shorter online. So I cut a little bit out of the interview from the beginning. I didn't cut any of the conversation or cut around it, but I just cut a little of the beginning because we were talking about North Korea and he went on and it was boring. But I began, not saying anything, right? So it's just not worth it. But
not unless he was part of a chop shop
right.
that worked with North Korea. That would be interesting.
Yeah. So the initial
allegedly.
Allegedly.
No, I said it would be.
You're
Yeah,
gonna get-
would be.
We're in the subjunctive, folks.
Dude, it would be interesting if Matt did that. It would be interesting if I did that. I think it would be fascinating if frankly, if Emma was involved in a chop ring with North Korea.
Frankly.
Yeah. So
just hypothetical.
allegedly hypothetical interesting. Go ahead.
There we
Yes.
go. So yeah, basically I started the conversation talking about how, well, you know, these 4 Americans died in Benghazi and you felt that warranted an investigation, but Donald Trump, within the first few weeks of his presidency, killed an 8-year-old American girl in a strike in Yemen.
Yep.
What do you think warrants an investigation? So it kind of got, or he I guess began saying, you know, Benghazi was about American lives. And so then I follow up saying, when we're talking about American lives, did you not care about this 8-year-old girl that passed away in the first 2 months of his presidency?
And he handled this really calmly. All right, let's check this out. This is really well done.
You talked about protecting American lives. I'm just wondering where you stand on what merits investigation, because within the first month or two of President Trump's time in office, he authorized a strike in Yemen that killed an 8-year-old American girl. So that's not necessarily protecting American lives. We didn't have any, no one looked into that. There were no investigations like we saw with Benghazi. Where do you draw that?
Look, I appreciate your premise, and you have a right to be wrong, and in this case you're wrong. President Obama fired more drones, fired more weapons against targets that included women and children, and in some cases Americans, than his predecessor.
I agree, and Trump has already surpassed the number of civilian deaths in Syria and Iraq than Obama did in his entire presidency.
You know, you can always look at your numbers. President Obama inherited wars that were coming to an end, but he made a decision to withdraw completely, allowed them to ferment, allowed Syria to fall into other hands, and he didn't do it because he's a bad person. He did it because his interpretation of what was to be done turned out to be wrong. We could have similar discussions about George W. Bush.
What about Trump killing all of those civilians in Syria and Afghanistan?
Well, first of all, you know, that's your statement. In a war in which almost nobody wears uniforms, but they kill each other, a discussion of what a civilian is very different.
But he began this conversation with the premise that Obama had killed more civilians, so you were going...
No, actually, I responded to your statement, and you said that, and what I said was that he had fired more drones and hellfires and so on against targets, including civilians. So, or actually including women and children that were in those facilities. I looked under both George W. Bush and President Obama. I watched those missiles hit targets. I saw the people going in and out. I saw the efforts by Department of Defense and others to deconflict to the greatest extent possible, to hit only the target, the individual they were looking for, to be as tactical and as surgical as they could be. They can't always be. And so if you really look at it, and if you want to be fair, liberal-minded, if you will, we're now with the third president. All 3 presidents have had substantially the same rules of engagement for our men and women, both at DOD and CIA and other places, which is to go after known bad guys, if you will, and to deconflict the greatest amount possible. Those policies and those people have not changed.
Disrespect him.
So
well, I wanted to give it full context so no one could say, "Oh, you chopped this interview up."
No, it's perfect. But I'm free to say, Jesus Christ.
From our perspective, we appreciate when people leave the fuller context.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
definitely.
I work doing this stuff. I edit this stuff, so I know how you guys feel.
You know best practices.
Out of it. And for those of us, Republicans and Democrats, and you could talk to Jane Harmon or any of the other people that I see
Jane
on
Harmon,
the Intelligence Committee.
Jane Harmon,
those are
that's
hard
a strong
decisions,
pull right there.
and those decisions are not made by the president. They're made by men and women who are trying to get the bad guys and not kill innocents. Thank you.
We can agree to disagree, but thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
We don't have to agree to disagree. Those are all facts.
I mean, I would also say that restraint is lacking deeply in the United States government.
You did go to a liberal college.
I did. Thank you.
Wow. Wow, what a little sanctimonious bastard.
Arm pat.
All right,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if he stayed there like a mature human being, how would you have responded to all this stuff he just said?
I don't know. I mean, I was happy to continue the conversation, but I knew I was just getting lip service from him, and so I just said, all right, let's end this interview. It was a fine discussion. And then he couldn't leave well alone when I said, we're going to agree to disagree. No, it's a fact. No, it's not a fact. It's not a fact in the slightest. It's the definition of your opinion. Yeah. My opinion is that we could exercise more restraint. I mean, the line I always feel like, you guys can tell me if I should have let him talk that long, but I don't want for them to feel like I'm an activist. I want them to feel like I'm trying to get to some core conversation and some core truth. And so that's why I didn't interrupt him or anything, but I still was able to get him that flustered. So it does, I think that there's the reason I go with that particular style is because I think it's a bit more effective. Mm-hmm. They, I think look calm and normal, and he looks very unreasonable for reacting that way.
He looks tense and bizarre.
Yeah. So,
but I just want to for a note, man. I'll throw to you in a second. But he went through 3 different positions. I just want to spell those out. So first he went to, well, what about Obama? Which is again, it's the advantage of not having an MSNBC position, which is right. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, way too many civilian casualties under Obama. Although he's it's so incredible to watch somebody think that they're being halfway clever and because it's then his predecessor. It's okay, dude. First of all, I'm not going to defend Obama, and secondly, I'm asking about Trump, who's exceeded Obama, so that's a ridiculous point. You match him on that, then he goes to, well, this is hard to define, which and there was one other thing, but this is probably the most important point.
After he hit Obama on the thing he's now saying is hard to define. So the goalposts are just consistently moving.
Exactly.
And it's not like he went after Obama for these things when he was in Congress. No, he's using it now.
Exactly.
To defend Trump.
Exactly. And then he goes to the core obscenity of the policy, which Obama used and Bush used, and I'm sure Trump is using, which is if you do drone strikes based on behavioral targeting, which is literally the language they use, you hit a certain, if the 3 of us actually would hit these demographics really easily, right? We're in the mountains in Pakistan somewhere. I could just say well, there was 3 men in their 20s and 30s making movements around a certain area. Yeah. That fits a behavioral profile, and we're going to kill you. That was... Targeted strikes are different. Targeted strikes were ones where they knew who they were hitting theoretically, which is a whole other argument and also a big problem. But those behavioral strikes. So then he went
also signature strikes.
Well, that's what the word they used. Those were you're right. I wasn't thinking of the right word. That's what they called them.
Yeah.
So he went. So then he just went back to that logic to be oh well, you don't know who's wearing a uniform.
Well, yeah, and Michael just explained the content of what he did there, but the form is just. I'm a former congressman. I have this gravitas. Mm-hmm. When I start talking, I define it as I'm answering your question, even if I'm not really addressing it. So I'm just going to wax poetical until you interrupt me and look, flustered yourself, saying what, you're not answering my question. Well, it's wait a second, give me time to answer your question. I'm a statesman here.
Well, he does that thing where Republicans do this with me all the time, and I don't throw this argument out a lot, but I think there's an element of sexism, and I'm also, under 30, so there's some of that. They go, as you know, and then they say their point. Right. And I tweeted about, I don't know that. It's a way, even if it's subconscious, I don't think it is. I would be giving them the benefit of the doubt to make me question my own logic and fact pattern. And so to go with whatever they're saying, but I don't know that at all. But
none of us know that.
Well,
because it's bullshit.
It shows that most of the time they're interacting with journalists, particularly conservative journalists. Yeah. It's a form of mesmerism, basically. It's I'm going to act as if I'm answering this. I'm going to look as if I'm answering it. Don't pay attention if the content actually really speaks to the question.
Right.
I'm just going to look in a composed way, deliver this sort of, I'm just going to wax poetical for a few paragraphs here.
The Democrats have a different bullshit technique?
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say so. I mean, I would say so. I would say that it's a different. We're having more of a discussion when I'm talking to Democrats. I mean, Democrats are more used to being challenged by the media,
right,
on both sides. Usually, it's from a Republican perspective, or an establishment one, so they're a little more thrown. But I would say that Republicans are able to strong arm themselves out of conversations more frequently.
Does it ever surprise you, like, that someone like that would basically throw a temper tantrum so easily?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was so, you know, he was very cordial at the start of the interview. And I mean, I thought it was bizarre that he asked me where I went to college. I did not say I went to a liberal college. That is false. I went to a pretty conservative college, but I went to a liberal arts school. So a small, tiny school in Pennsylvania. And, I don't know why you would ever ask that question. Like, I don't give a shit where you went to college. I don't give a shit where any of you guys went to college, right? Do you care? It's all about who you are now.
I went to Bob Jones.
That's just signaling to his. That's just signaling to his audience.
Yeah, that's
though, right?
no, that's all it is. Exactly. You made him look bad. You did better than him. So all he's got is like, we know where she went to school.
Right. I mean, but it's like. And I don't understand. It's an elitist thing. No one in the real world actually cares where anyone goes to college. But
no, that's actually really, no, you're exactly right, because that's funny, because they spend all this time, and it is true. Like, yes, if you go to certain environments that I guess you could call liberal elite or whatever, people are totally obsessed with that, and it's gross. But they're obsessed with it. But they're obsessed with it like in opposition to it. Whereas you're right, for most normal people, it's just literally not something that's going to be on your mind,
right,
one way or another.
Yeah,
that's totally right. All right, we're going to do, in a couple of minutes, we are going to do a little bit Game of Thrones talk, which we have never done on this show.
Thank God.
You will literally inaugurate. Well, Matt doesn't watch it. I stopped watching it for a really long time, and I guess this means we're going to talk about it now. We'll get to Biden in a few minutes. Griscom, you watch it?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay, because this is like...
And wait. Sorry, you're going to take over in a second, but spoilers. And don't fucking tweet at me, and don't bitch.
Yeah.
Spoilers. Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the TYT Game of Thrones reviews as someone who knows a lot about the series. I mean, I'm like a dork, right?
Wait, are you a book reader as well?
I have dabbled in the first book. My significant other is a really big book reader and someone who's been very critical of the show and has gotten me to be very critical of the show because, you know, when I'm watching it, right, I feel this sugar high and it's this event and we're all sitting down and we all, you know, whatever, hanging out watching. And then I think about it like 2 hours later and I'm like, that didn't make any sense. You know, the Long Night episode I thought was terrible.
Was that one a couple episodes ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
Okay.
So,
all right, guys, have it out.
Did you have it? How did you? Was it because you couldn't see it, or?
Well, no. I mean, the visuals are phenomenal, right? But first of all,
she can see.
I can.
It was really dark, so a lot of people who have like bad setups couldn't see anything in the episode, and they complained about it.
Oh, really? Okay.
But for me, the show I thought, or the story I thought, was always about how these political squabbles were all ignoring the larger problem, which is like this kind of climate change allegory. I mean, it doesn't need to be read as that, but humanity in general, death, whatever, beyond the wall. And to make that in the third episode, and not only, you know, this was supposed to be this unstoppable army, characters only with very neat arcs died there. There was no shocking death. I loved when Jon left Sam behind and then went off to try to get the Night King, but there was no follow through on that. Sam should have died right there. There was a lot of hero shielding. And then also Arya...
Hero shielding? I've never heard this phrase
before.
Before.
Plot armoring. Wow.
Hero shielding sounds great. Yeah. You should have just... Yeah, I have no idea.
I just felt that also... What was Jon brought back for? I mean, maybe we'll find out if he kills Daenerys next.
He's going to need to clip her.
I understand.
He's going to need to take that equation out.
I understand what you mean about them being a little cowardly. And, you know, they just sort of the only big death really was like the Dothraki. And that was, you know.
But that was pathetic.
Yeah, it was absolutely pathetic.
All right, guys, remember we're going to keep it a little general.
Yeah, sorry. But this general. The one thing about that episode, and it might have been the one before, that did get me a little frustrated.
Matt's going to go nibble and edible
They
in the bathroom.
introduced racism.
Yeah.
for no reason in that show, and that really I felt like it's a very weird move, right? Because it's like
the way the Northerners were
there's like this
reacting
northern people, and they're all white, and then there's these people from this other continent who are black. And the Northerners were all just like, there's no reason for it, but just like really racist towards them. And I felt that was a weird thing to sort
Isn't
of
that part of the
bleed over into
realism of the show?
I think it was also part of like it's the Northern culture, so they've always been mistrustful of outsiders, even if it's the people beyond the wall as well. So
shit, David.
Sorry.
Oh, shit.
No,
It's fine.
But
You're coming up against the
last
book reader, motherfucker.
The last episode, just to we'll keep it short and sweet. We were just chatting about.
No, keep those tweets up. Sorry, yeah.
The fan reaction. Yeah. I mean, I thought that I was devastated. I'm a woman. I saw myself in Daenerys. I think that actress. I mean, she got made fun of a lot, but I'm still I'm still thinking about.
She got made fun of.
Yeah,
because I'll say I think a couple seasons ago I stopped watching the show because there was I don't even remember what it was, but it was something that was so gross to watch that I felt like giving the show the finger back.
Right.
And I was just like, you know what? I don't need fuck you. But now this season I'm I just don't I don't care about this or that person. I just kind of want to know how it settles.
Yes.
So I'm not, but I always thought why did people make fun of her is what I'm trying to ask. I thought she did fine.
Can you tell me?
I mean, there's a lot of melodramatic acting on that show in general, but that's the thing is it's still. I mean, that's why I could never take it so seriously. I mean, people are like, this is like The Sopranos. It's like, yeah, there's still Lord Suck Me or whatever, and dragons, and come on, let's be serious.
Oh,
this
but
is
it's
not,
earned. I mean,
yes.
As someone who loves politics, I mean, the later seasons have abandoned this altogether, but the political intrigue of the
I thought
early
it was really good.
It says
total
well done.
standout in the first couple of seasons. I agree. But anyways, she wasn't bad.
No. So I thought the moment where she shudders atop Drogon before she, takes a torch to King's Landing was just it got chills up my spine. So thinking about it, I think that the problem people, and so anyway, I'm devastated by the way her character has gone, and she's got to die next episode. But because it could have been earned, but they rushed it. Because they're trying to get the series done and they want to do Star Wars movies, these creators. And they don't
That's
have...
what they want to do?
That they're signed up for these next Star Wars movies. George R.R. Martin wanted them to do 4 more longer seasons, and they said, no, we're going to do 2 short seasons.
Yeah.
And it shows.
I mean, you could feel how rushed it is.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. But I don't know. I just, my whole reaction to this, freak out, which we should put the tweets up in a second. But
And then these tweets will take us into Emma wants to dunk on white feminism.
But it's just it's just surprising to me that everyone's so worked up about, look, it's been a show that from the very beginning, people who want power are always going to be dangerous.
Right.
People who don't care about power
preach it
might be better, but they're going to get killed by the people who want power.
Right.
And is it surprising that at the end of the show that one of the characters we've watched from the very beginning who has wanted power has now turned out to be bad? I don't know. Exactly. It just goes with the entire premise of the show.
Clearly had a religious, an extraordinarily dangerous entitlement, which is
and
not the point of the show.
And even more tragically, no family, no roots, knowing nothing except the quest for power her entire life. She had internalized this as her identity because she was ripped from her family as a young person, only knew her brother who abused her, and then now all of her advisors have died or betrayed her or whatever, and so the trigger was too quick. But I think the devolution makes sense, and it's arguably, in my view, the greatest tragedy of the show is what happened to a character who has these instincts, and the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I feel like she kind of personifies that.
So we don't know whether these tweets were done they might have been in a dummy account of yours, Emma. And maybe we should, I guess, let's try to keep her name out of it because it's hard because she deleted them and they're ridiculous, but whatever. She deleted them, so let's try to not make it a thing. This is an actual tweet, and I have to say, I'm going to do old man shit here and really be if anything besides a potential invasion of Iran is upsetting you this much, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, but you're more aloof than me. I cried twice on Monday.
All right,
thinking about the show.
Okay, literally. If you think that after a decade of Danny learning how to be a leader and how to rule and how to have compassion for people, that this is a natural story arc, you are a simple-minded twat waffle who can't be trusted to have good opinions about storytelling.
That's the John.
This is going in so hard.
That's the John Oliver School of Comedy, that twat waffle comment there.
Well.
If you cannot be trusted, if you think John Oliver is funny, you can't be trusted to do comedy. Gotta be. Oh wait. Okay. I'm so fucking mad right now. Game of Thrones has been a waste of my life. Gotta be white guys who ultimately have to the day after years of women killing it. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. By the way, she's also wrong because I could tell you pretty confidently, knowing very little, that I see. Look, I think the big galaxy brain point of the show would be to do some type of like, hey, all of the wild people are right and this is all bullshit. But within the context of like the game, like Sansa is going to end up on top somehow. She's the best.
There's going to be no throne. There's going to be some sort of council. That's what I think.
And she's going to be really important. So even that is like.
And
but
it's
anyway,
also like
I'm literally crying right now because a decade of my life has been wasted on a show ultimately created by the white male viewpoint.
That's watching television.
Yeah. So, well, I'd also just say like your whole life should not be invested in a TV show. Sorry.
And the most important hero of this entire season has been Arya. Like, you know, like the storyline has not been actually like any return to male dominance or anything like that. In fact, Jon Snow looked absolutely pathetic for the entire season so far.
Well, his aunt's trying to fuck him all the time. Maybe you could give him a break. I'm sorry, that was my white male viewpoint.
I know, I'm choking on your white male viewpoint.
That's so gross.
I saw one mashup. I don't know, you guys don't move off the dragon talk.
You should go to T. T had some good ones about.
Okay, we'll go to T. But wait, so do you think? Wait, but don't you think that there were a couple of moments early on, if I remember them, that like it's not like it came out of nowhere.
Oh my God, no! Again, her arc was like she was at like 70% way through the arc, and then they just like did it. Because they want to finish the show. But you could have foreseen this coming if you were someone who paid attention. She was someone who was excited by the idea of fire. She enjoyed burning people. I mean, but it always seemed to have a strategic purpose. They could have shown more of a devolution of like it not having a strategic purpose anymore. But again, these women who are trying to make this more than this is, first of all, it's not a feminist viewpoint to completely exclude women from the corrupting influence of power. The show had so many feminist moments, despite how you think it ended. It was revolutionary in that way. The arcs of Sansa and Arya are beautiful for feminism and for women. And I think the show is way bigger than your myopic view of how things should be. This was never like a Hillary Clinton bumper sticker. I'm sorry. You know?
Does this hurt Elizabeth Warren that she wrote some painful, embarrassing blog post about wanting, like, we need more lead? I got to get Elizabeth Warren something. You know, Danny just said she's tired of it. If you don't want bankruptcy reform, we're going to burn the whole motherfucking city.
Yeah. No,
I'm tired of being called the Al Gore of women.
I saw
and if I'm
so
called
many,
that again, I'm going to set off a nuke.
I saw so many, like, she's called the Al Gore of women?
No.
Okay.
I just coined that.
That's Michael's.
Well, she to me, she is very analogous to Al Gore.
Yeah.
She's really smart. She has really good policy ideas. I mean, she's better. She's more progressive than he is. But they also have like they're like the classic, because a lot of politicians, I do think that people are like, hey, they're substance, but they don't like they're not that charismatic. It's like, no, most of them actually really just sort of suck in both ways. Like they both don't have substance. They don't have it. But like Gordon Brown, Elizabeth Warren, and Al Gore, you can all kind of make the case that, like, yes, they don't necessarily have like classical political skills, but they are, you know, incredibly intelligent, capable leaders, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good. Yeah, I mean, I'm so sick of these white feminists, and I can say it because I'm a white woman, right?
Yes.
I mean,
go off.
Go off, Queen. We can agree.
Truly, Queen with a K and a W. Could you? Yeah, slay. Yeah, this was hilarious. Are you gonna play this?
Wait, go off for a second first, then we'll play.
I think this sums it up actually.
This sums it up, but I'll just add this one thing. There was not a black woman or a minority woman on the planet who was bothered or who saw this as some sort of persecution against them because they faced actual
Don't you think that they actually really appreciated how angry Daenerys was on their behalf?
Perhaps.
Because if they didn't kill her friend, she wouldn't have had an opportunity to show what an ally she was.
And interestingly, that these women didn't have a problem with some of the actual problematic elements of Daenerys being kind of a white savior and freeing all these brown people.
Yeah,
now she's pissed off.
I will say, so someone who does not necessarily always have the woke takes, I found that to be pretty weird. I was like, what the fuck am I watching? You mean like this like Aryan ad for like for getting air in the Alps before restoring your master race is going, and literally the only people who have pigmentation on the show are getting freed by her? Even I was like, this is bringing out some of my freshman year shit.
It's not quite.
Doesn't look so good.
It's not quite at the level of the goblins in Harry Potter. The goblin bankers.
Yeah.
Well, that was just sort of some good old chummy anti-Semitism.
I heard Ilhan Omar wrote the goblins into the story.
She ghost wrote those parts.
And then and Rashida Tlaib played all of them.
I get into a fucking goblin
and then Harry goes to Gringotts, and there's these little guys with hooked noses.
It's like, I have an idea. What if all of the bankers are short men with crooked, disgusting noses, and they live in the gold vaults? I wonder who that's like. And then they hypnotize Harry into supporting their plans.
So we've got a mashup that sort of, I think, captures this white feminism, Daenerys. That's how you pronounce the name, right? Daenerys.
Yeah.
I'll have to like duck the sound a little bit because he uses a popular song to go with it, but you'll get the picture.
I hope this guy's being ironic.
Yes.
Okay.
Driving Miss Sunday.
Driving Miss Sunday? That's actually a very good line.
Yeah.
Is this going to be Katy Perry?
Yes!
All right, before we get digged.
I think that my colleague Ken Klippenstein told him to put, or like said something.
This is definitely Clinton 2016 right here. That I remember when you really got into like the dregs of that primary, and people were like, "Oh, she can't be friends with Henry Kissinger because she's a woman."
Yeah. Oh man.
She can't support covering up the juntas murdering children because she's a woman.
Well, this is a good transition, actually, because I mean, I'm taking over the podcast, obviously.
Well, that's what you're here for.
So
until you have a turn where you get Koch brothers money for the show,
and then I burn
corrupt the whole thing,
everyone.
and you burn everybody
indiscriminately.
Mm-hmm.
So I made this point on Twitter today, and I think it's true because I said it. I think Joe Biden's more out of touch than Hillary Clinton was ever.
Good transition. That's exact. I think that, I mean, to me, it's still like a toss-up, but like that's already a horrible. But anyway, regardless, why do you think so?
He said something about how Trump, after in the post-Trump era, he thinks that the Republicans will come to their senses and they'll want to work with the Democrats. For all of Hillary Clinton's faults, she treated Republicans like the enemy, not ideologically, but politically.
Right.
That's insane to me. That's insane. He was president under, he was vice president under Obama, who tried with all of his might to get the Republicans to compromise all of the time.
Yeah, the best thing about Obama was how much he stuck to that to prove that you can't cooperate with
No, but I think Obama also genuinely had these delusions. I mean, Obama was the one who said, he said, "Oh, I think the fever will break." Right. My problem with Clinton is that was the one thing I always gave the Clintons credit for until 2016. Because I was like, oh, like she actually did run a purely Trump-centric campaign, and she didn't go after Paul Ryan. She didn't do all these other things. So 2016 blurs that for me, but I think more broadly, I think you're right.
Right.
In terms of like, if Biden is actually on top of everything else going to take the most delusional impulse from Obama, that's a really big problem. And here he is talking about healthcare. I want you to, there's lots to respond to in this too.
What do you say to calls for some sort of universal healthcare? or something like Medicare for all from some of the other people running
Well,
in the Democratic primary?
I think they're well intended. I think they mean it, and it's not. I'm not. But here's the deal. Right now, you have you have this overwhelming number of employers who are paying into the healthcare plan. Why let them off the hook? All of a sudden, they don't have to pay anything. What happens then to this whole thing about profit and the rest? I mean, it should be part of the compensation if you have it.
Profit.
So what do you think of that spin? We shouldn't have Medicare for all
Because of profit.
because there's the whole profit thing, which I literally don't know what he means by
Yeah.
that. But then there's the idea that, like, if your employer who literally terrorizes you with meager health benefits, and probably your prime anxiety in life is losing a job because you'll lose your health care benefits, if we just create a universal government system that covers you, then you'll let your employer off the hook.
Yeah.
They'll have the relaxation of not terrorizing you with healthcare anymore. I don't understand. I literally, help me.
I can't. I mean, we're two people that obviously agree ideologically, and I can't.
But I'm
fathom
talking
that.
not even ideologically. Like,
Yeah.
can you like pinpoint what he's trying to do there?
No, I mean he's trying to do what he's done his entire career, which is compromise with the Republicans, and compromise and try to find some sort of middle ground. I mean, in 1990, he's the kind of Democrat that would have had success. I mean, he's run before and he didn't, but the kind of Democrat who would. And I just think that these answers over and over again are just proving that the only thing propping him up is Obama nostalgia, the size of his ego, the money in his coffers, and his ability to be completely delusional and propped up by the mainstream media. So I find his candidacy like deeply depressing and agitating at the same time, because it's so needless, and it's really bringing us back to a point that I genuinely think if he's the nominee that Trump will win a second term. I don't really have a question in my mind about it.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I think he would probably beat Trump for the same reasons that he's kind of just generically steamrolling ahead, which I do think that unfortunately there's a good amount of voters that whole normalcy thing really appeals to them. And that's literally all he's selling. But I mean,
but there's so many other normalcy candidates in the race.
But not with the prestige, not with the familiarity.
Not with Obama.
Not with
Yeah.
Obama. Like, I guess I mean, again, I really hate Joe Biden. And there's so many reasons to not like Joe Biden. But I feel like people like us have really underestimated his appeal. And like, just in terms of that, like, super basic stuff. Like, he's got some generic, like, charisma that people like us are not going to find appealing, but I think is, like, appealing to a certain type of definitely generally older voter. And there's, like, a sense that, okay, like, that's fine. That's somebody you can replace Trump with, so I don't have to think about this stuff anymore. I don't have to engage. Because even if you elect somebody great like Sanders, I think the implicit promise for a lot of people that want to tap out of politics is that they'll still be very engaged, because it's like, well, all of a sudden a good person is going to be trying to do these like transformative things. And I think a phenomenon of people don't want.
But if you want to tap out of politics, you're probably not voting in the Democratic primary.
I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, I think you're right for sure. But I think that there are clear. I mean, I don't know. What do you make of why he's been so popular so far?
I
Like,
think,
what is that appealing to?
I think he'll be popular up until Iowa. I really do think he'll have a significant popularity, but I think he'll take once it comes time for people to actually hunker down and look at these candidates, especially Iowans who, it's ridiculous that they have this incredible hold over our politics, but they take their jobs seriously as people who are determinative of this process. Once you start talking to them, I don't know what vision he is selling except for bland idealism, which someone like, Pete Buttigieg is doing the same thing, or Beto O'Rourke is doing the same thing. There's only two candidates who are doing what Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are doing.
Right.
So I think that puts him at an inherent disadvantage there in that. But again, the name recognition, the return to stability, I could be wrong, but I do think that it's a lot of it's hot air right now, and we could see.
Your lips to Allah's ears. So what? Because this is a Muslim show,
right?
So what? This is a Sharia show
funded by Saudi Arabia and Qatar.
TMBS.
That's what we're.
Mohammed bin Salman.
I'm taking money from the Iranians.
I'm trying to get funding from Iran.
TYT is funded by Iran. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's
How
cool
do you negotiate that? I was talking like, of course we're funded by the Iranians.
We give them nuclear weapons in exchange. Obviously,
we made a deal. We gave them nuclear weapons. They gave us funding because we're progressive.
Yeah.
I'd like to do.
God damn it!
I like to see Cenk doing selfie videos from Tehran.
And it's just like, hey guys, I'm just about to meet with the supreme leader. Awesome guy. Totally awesome guy. Very progressive. He's got a lot of ideas. He's awesome. He's totally idea oriented. What do you think though? The one thing, like if we had like the tip of a spear to be like the one thing that actually undermines Biden, like is it like these, like obviously Warren, like her first main scuffles in public life were going up against him for doing the bidding of the credit card industry to terrorize most Americans on a super basic economic level. Now, Sanders and AOC are moving this really important piece of legislation forward. I mean, in Iowa, they actually do tend to think a bit more about foreign policy. It's a big reason Obama beat Hillary was because he opposed the invasion of Iraq. And then there's obviously all of the like.
And Bernie did better than expected.
And Bernie,
Iowa.
Absolutely.
I mean, almost won.
And right. I mean, so what do you think would be like that thing? Like if our job, and maybe I'll be, even more like, because I don't have the journalistic component that you have, right? Like I'm very clearly an opinion and analysis.
Right. I mean, I do both, but it's.
No, you do both really well, but
Thank
I can say up front, I want to sink Joe Biden's candidacy, and I will never be, sitting and interview. If I interview Joe Biden, I'll be very polite to the man, but I'm not going to be.
But
giving
inside,
him,
you're thinking, "I want to destroy you."
Well, he's never going to agree to an interview with me after I made that clip go viral of him, whatever, talking about Dick Cheney.
That's also probably true that you will not get an interview with Joe Biden.
No, I know.
So how do we sink him? What's the best way to sink him?
I mean, if you're talking about foreign policy, his record is abysmal. You can hit him from every angle. If you care about foreign policy, he voted for the Iraq War. If you care about corporate justice and the fact that we have terrible income inequality, the bankruptcy bill, which he voted for 3 times. Hillary
authored it. He authored it
and is proud. And Hillary Clinton was not on board for the bankruptcy bill and flipped in 2005.
You're a corporate sellout, Joe.
You're a corporate sellout.
Right. So we can talk about that. Or if you want to talk about racism in this country, Joe Biden was against school integration in the 1970s. He is someone who is proud of his crime bill, which has decimated black and brown communities with racist drug policy. And over, I just think from every angle, if you get all of these communities that care about policy, and it's not just old white people that want nostalgia and want things to be like the good old days, then you can chip away at his support. The media just has to do its job and actually talk about his record, and I think that's our job. I mean, I think he would be a really, maybe the worst choice that we could make.
I think Buttigieg would be a terrible choice too.
Strom Thurmond's eulogy. Let's not forget that for his list of bad deeds.
Almost like the Democratic frontrunner right now in 2020 supported school segregation in the 1970s, gave Strom Thurmond's eulogy. Like at the very time.
And likes Dick Cheney.
And likes Dick Cheney.
Thinks he's a, quote, decent guy.
And what's incredible with that clip too is it's like he says it and then like Walter Mondale, who's not exactly a fucking Maoist, is like, yeah, I kind of disagree with you on that.
Right. Right.
It's like fucking Walter Mondale is like.
Most Republicans wouldn't say Dick Cheney is a decent guy. I mean, not politicians, but voters. He left office with a 13% approval rating.
Right.
He was nice to you on a personal level. That's how this guy thinks. And that's the definition of out of touch, when you can't separate your colleagues from the work that they do.
Right.
And I get it. Bernie will say, I have Republican friends, whatever. Dick Cheney's on a different level. It's a different level. He's a war criminal, and I think most people know it.
Bless me, Father, if I have sinned.
There's that great clip. He's such an asshole. Joe Biden really is such an asshole.
He is. I mean, and I get the charisma thing. Like, I still remember in 2016 when he did his speech and he goes, "Yo, this is America. Come on." I was like, that was really well done. His speech was really good.
He has political skills.
It was awesome when he was mean to Paul Ryan.
It was awesome when he was mean to Paul Ryan.
Yes.
That's right.
He has political acumen and abilities, but I think when it comes to policy, it's pretty terrible.
He's horrific. And I think, again, the only other thing I want to underline is I think he could absolutely beat Trump, but I want to start thinking on longer timelines. Like, first of all, obviously I could be wrong and he could be like the one person, just like Hillary Clinton was the one person that could lose to Donald Trump. So that's possible.
I think they're very similar.
I think you're totally right. They are super similar. And then say he wins, and then it's 2022, and we've done 2 more years of this nonsense, and none of the patterns that are in place that are giving a rise to like a global right-wing authoritarianism are getting addressed. Then what happens? I mean, literally, I don't know. Maybe there's an insurgency. Maybe somebody runs a primary against Biden. There's positive scenarios too. But a more likely scenario is that this problem that has been festering gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And then we have even another cycle of see guys, Democrats get into power, and the banks are taken care of, the wars don't stop, none of the fundamentals are taken care of. And that side is going to be as extreme as ever.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like, it's an overused, I guess, metaphor, but putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound.
Yeah.
It's just, we've let it fester since Clinton, since Clinton, I would say, right? So Reagan brought this era in and we had the sugar high of it, and then Clinton kind of split the baby, and Obama tried to be a centrist in the same way, but the conditions were so poor at that point that we couldn't do it anymore, and then we went so far right. I mean, and we literally have a reality TV show host as president. So
we literally have a reality.
We do. So
I want to play one more clip before we go to the post game, because this really did disturb me. Our friend David Dole at Rational National put this clip together. I'm going to be on his show soon. So people ask me why some people still legitimately ask me why I criticize Rachel Maddow. And I guess partially it's because I have to cop to the fact that this is really annoying. The paper shuffling that she does. And yeah. It's like, year was 1973.
Yeah, we get it, Rachel. You're prepared.
We understand. You have a lot of briefing. So
you wear glasses.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Not
tonight.
So, and I'm profoundly uninterested in relitigating anything about Russia with anybody. Like actively uninterested.
Resign, Lindsey Graham.
Resign, Lindsey Graham. Resign, everybody. Anybody who's built their career on Russia stuff one way or another.
I know. I mean, I just saw that trending today, and I was like,
I can't even believe it's trending again.
I don't care.
I don't care either. So, but what I do care about...
Okay, I'll resign.
All right.
Since you asked me so forcefully.
Since y'all, I got ratioed on Twitter.
I mean, it's just about... I'm as close to a war with Iran as I've ever been.
Yeah,
but
right.
since you asked me to resign, I guess I'll duck out.
Yeah, it's not like my entire life's purpose in public life isn't about to be fulfilled in a catastrophic war, but people were rude to me on Twitter. Incidentally, people who also support war with Iran. So this is I do care about not invading Venezuela, and I do care about not having a coup in Venezuela. And it is like every time people say, "Oh, Donald Trump is a racist, he's an incompetent," and it's like, yes, that is all true. And that's a pretty good reason that even if, God forbid, you have a structural critique of U.S. interference overseas, you would at least say, you know what, Donald Trump is probably not the person to support in a regime change policy in Venezuela. But it's not. But this clip with Maddow, it's not that she's even supporting our coup mongering in Venezuela per se, or not that she's even sort of, elucidating what's happening there one way or another. She's picking a bizarre narrow margin to feed her relentless fixation on one story to obscure the truth about an incredibly dangerous force in foreign policy, as well as the story of Venezuela. Check out this clip.
I mean, how do you come to work anymore if you're John Bolton? Right? Regardless of what you thought about John Bolton before this, of his whole career and his track record.
I'm sorry. I have to do as Sam. Regardless of what you think of the architect of the invasion of Iraq, one of the key architects of the invasion of Iraq, a guy who was rejected by a Republican Senate, George Voinovich, voted with Democrats to block his being ambassador to the UN. Actually, in his case, because George Voinovich didn't like how mean he was to his subordinates. Okay?
Well, because that's what matters. That's what matters.
I mean,
it's Amy Klobuchar too, but like
it doesn't matter as much as, of course, the fact that he's literally his purpose of being in office is to instigate wars, potentially on 3 continents, or so keep that aside. And what is Rachel? Because of course, John Bolton, the national security advisor with one of the most extreme and dangerous policy records in modern United States. That's obviously secondary to the much more important point that she's about to get to. Can you guys guess what that more important point she's about to get to might be?
Russia.
Russia.
I mean, how do you come to work anymore if you were John Bolton? Right? Regardless of what you thought about John Bolton before this, of his whole career and his track record. I mean, just think of John Bolton as a human being. This is what John Bolton, human being, thought his job was this week. Like, again, whether you like what he's saying here or not, this is what they've had him out there saying.
The Trump administration has also made the claim that Russia is very much involved in propping up the Maduro regime. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told my colleague Wolf Blitzer yesterday that there was a plane waiting to take Maduro to Cuba, but the Russians talked him out of it. What exactly is the Russian role here?
Look, the Russians like nothing better than putting a thumb in our eye. They're using the Cubans as surrogates. They'd love to get effective control of a country in this hemisphere. We've made it clear to the Russians in a lot of conversations at a lot of different levels, some of which are going to continue today, why we think this behavior is unacceptable to us.
Yeah, you thought that was your job, but it turns out not at all. Not after Vladimir Putin gets done with President Trump today.
He is not looking at all to get involved in Venezuela, other than he'd like to see something positive happen for Venezuela.
Putin doing anything in Venezuela? Putin? Who said Putin's doing anything bad in Venezuela? Who have you been listening to? I'm with him. He says he's not. I mean, John Bolton, God bless you. Good luck delicately and carefully shaving around that impressive mustache when you have to look at yourself in the mirror in coming days, Mr. National Security Advisor. I mean, this is who you're working for. You thought your job was to push Russia back because of what they're doing in Venezuela. The president spent an hour on the phone with Vladimir Putin today. Putin told him he's not in Venezuela. So now the new position of the U.S. government is that Putin's not in Venezuela.
And we'll stop on David's face with the right mixture of disgust and confusion. Good. I said, for the same reason that I support U.S. forces protecting Kurdish forces in Syria, I want a Russian presence in Venezuela if it will deter greater U.S. aggression there. And the idea that you would center anything on that conversation other than not invading or instigating a coup in Venezuela is demented. Demented.
She sounds. I'm not going to say it.
She sounds like I'll speculate for you. She sounds like Eric Garland. Like the way she's talking to like Mr. Defense Secretary and asking him twice how he wakes up in the morning. Guess what? John Bolton's not fucking thinking about you, Rachel Maddow. John Bolton has all these fancy intelligence reports that he gets to cook up and spin. And like that's what he's looking for, not what Maddow said.
Whatever you think about him, I mean, no, there's, as someone who is a supposed progressive or who identifies as a liberal, you should already have a conclusion on John Bolton, independent of whatever conspiracy theory that you've cooked up about Russia. I mean, okay, sure, I agree with what you're saying. Like, we're supposed to be, as liberals, as progressives, principled and moving towards peace. This shouldn't be some sort of peace, P-I-E-C-E, in your larger Russian narrative. This is completely independent of that.
It's also like You're right. It's funny too because there's this totally delusional presumptuousness that John Bolton. I mean, the great advantage conservatives have is they don't give a flying fuck about what anybody like Rachel Maddow thinks, and the left should learn that more too. Like, I don't give a fuck. So, but if he was listening to her, the upshot would be, I need to, which I'm sure he's doing anyways, which is I need to reinforce my position inside the administration, which is pushing for a fucking coup in Venezuela.
Yeah. And
again, if you want to do the dumb shaving mustache joke, I don't know, maybe the millions of Iraqis could be something that he could have trouble looking at him. And of course he doesn't, because he's proud of it, because he is, I guess, if Dick Cheney's a war criminal, John Bolton is is a facilitator of war criminals.
Yeah, and she's not outright saying what her position is, but in essence, she's egging the administration on to be more aggressive in their ousting of Maduro, which is extremely disastrous. So you're coming at it from a right-wing perspective to work backwards from your conclusion that Russia has a hold and Putin is the one that's the emphasis that she puts on the syllable, right? It's just, I messed it up. I should have done emphasis. Whatever. I mean, it's just, it's maddening. I mean, I can't believe she's still doing this after all this time.
It's embarrassing. It's demented.
And to uncritically take this nonsense story, by the way, about, Russia deciding, keeping Maduro in the country at the last minute, just taking that uncritically. I mean, when that story...
that story was repeated by Mike Pompeo on television without any basis.
The day of, too.
Just entertain the fact that maybe an extreme far-right hawk who's Secretary of State might not always be honest when they're trying to cook up an invasion scenario or coup.
Or the cogs in the national security complex that fed you said information may not be completely honest actors and may have their own agendas, as well as you reported on, Rachel Maddow, back a decade ago when you were when you were doing good work on the Iraq War. That's what's crazy to me, is that this administration is very extreme as well, and she was a watchdog of the Bush administration, but when it comes to Trump, she's making the right-wing argument and the more war hawkish argument against them, as opposed to doing the same thing that made her the top-rated host on MSNBC.
And maybe, also the other thing, if you go back to Iraq, the Russian government opposed the invasion. So maybe in light of recent revelations, we need to look at everything anew.
Well,
maybe the invasion of Iraq was against
Is she suggesting that we invade Iran to stick it to Russia?
I mean, God forbid, but I want to look at the Iran segments where the Russian foreign secretary says that people should de-escalate. And she goes, he's going to call Trump, and that's going to,
It's almost as if this is another country with a lot of influence, and when they see the United States as adversarial with another country, they see an opportunity, and then they ally themselves with said country, and it's pure geopolitical politics, and it's not some Machiavellian, Manchurian candidate thing that you're trying to cook up to I don't know. I mean, it's conspiracy territory at this point.
Yeah, and it's dangerous conspiracy territory when it's instigating a disastrous approach to Venezuela. So you're going to hang out with us for the beginning of the post game?
Yes.
How's the draft going?
I got a notification.
You got a notification. Do you want to? Is it a publicly available notification?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us what's up.
The Pelicans have won the NBA draft lottery.
No.
They shouldn't even have a team in New Orleans.
I know.
Why? Why is this in New Orleans?
The Knicks, it's not too bad, by the way.
If you go to New Orleans and you ask what the favorite sports teams are, the Pelicans will be fourth after their college baseball team there.
I believe that. Do you remember in Scarface when he goes, "Fly Pelicans"? That's what I always think of every time I see that.
So the Knicks, the Cavs, and the Suns were the worst three teams in the NBA, and they each had the best odds to get the first overall pick, and none of them did. The Knicks actually, of those teams, had the best situation for themselves. So the Pelicans are picking 1, the Grizzlies 2, the Knicks are picking 3, and the Lakers moved up into the top 4 and are picking 4. Cavs and Suns go 5 and 6, which is the respective worst situations for both of those teams.
Man,
very tough day for the Cavs and Suns.
Tough to be a Cavs fan.
Tough to be a Cavs fan. And LeBron was it, and now he's gone.
Now you got to think about Craig Elo.
In retrospect, I'm fine with 3. I'm fine with 3.
Oh,
But isn't it
positive?
Isn't it Zion and RJ Barrett and then everybody else?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to see. I don't know. The Grizzlies could take Ja Morant, and then I don't think the Knicks need a point guard because they have. I think Ntilikina, whatever. We'll see how he develops, but they have Dennis Smith Jr.
Power of positive thinking.
Pick assets.
But I don't think they need Ja Morant, so then they could get RJ Barrett. I'd be happy with that.
All right, and for all of you, first of all, sports talk is good, and secondly, we evened it out with Game of Thrones talk.
Yes.
All right, so calm down. All right, we're gonna go to the post game. Become a patron of the show today. We are, our next reach goal is 3,000 patrons. We're well over 2,000, so let's get to 3,000. We appreciate all of you. Huge amount, 2-to-1 extra content as a patron. Patreon.com/TMBS. Go get your early tickets to the Chicago live show, August 24th. We're coming to the Heartland, and all the other ways that you can support the show. We appreciate each and every one of you. Emma, thanks a million for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll see you in the post game. Thanks, everybody.